Step onto the field. I'm Patrick Dangerfield.
And I'm Josh Jenkins. Patrick, you are now officially, congratulations. I wasn't there. Sorry for that. But you are now officially a 300 gamer. Does it feel any different?
The wisdom, Josh. The wisdom. I feel like it comes out of my pores now. Everything that I do, it's wisdom filled. And we've got a wisdom filled episode of The Field this week, a massive weekend with the AFL season regular wrapping up. We saw an extraordinary Sunday afternoon footy. I think we'd all hoped that there would be an incredible crescendo to what's been a terrific season, but we couldn't have hoped for more excitement than what we got with the result, with the Western Bulldogs getting over the top of Hawthorn in Tasmania, and then the ensuing game between Carlton and Collingwood. And it was devastation if you're a Carlton supporter. It was extraordinarily triumphant. If you were Collingwood, it was a nail biter to the very end. You were there. Wowee.
Well, instead of us trying to describe what happened at Carlton and Collingwood, let's just listen. I'm sure you've seen it more than a few times. If you're a Carlton fan, I do apologise sincerely, but this is how things went down. So, for more context, and again, sorry, Blues fans, in round 22, with 22 seconds remaining, you were in the finals. In round 23, with 110 seconds remaining, you were in the finals. But as we now know, this is unfortunately for Blues fans and fortunately for Western Bulldogs and probably everyone else, this is what happened.
Ginnivan's there. Elliott's there as well. It kicked out the back. Now Elliott can face the goal. He can give it to Gideon and go for the lock. He kicks the goal. Collingwood are in front. Collingwood are in front. Can you believe it?
No, Brian, I cannot believe it. That audio, of course, thanks to our very good friends from Channel 7. It was hard to believe, Pat. Those who want to go in depth will see, they didn't have enough numbers behind the ball and all sorts of things. But besides all the X's and O's and all the tactics, genuine heartbreak for Carlton fans and players.
It was. I think especially given the fact that they had a significant lead at three-quarter time. You just felt like if they could get one of those early goals and it all of a sudden be a 5-goal margin, and there was opportunities for that. Patrick Cripps played one of the great games. He was just extraordinary. Contested possession, clearance. He was just extraordinary. It was amazing to see, especially given the late withdrawal of Sam Walsh, who we understand has had. It was listed as back issues, but it has to be something along the lines of a slip disc or something similar, because he's as tough as they come. Sammy Walsh. Oh, yeah, it's so challenging. I mean, we've both been part of games where you lose the ones that you should win, but given the season that had been, there's no doubt that they'll look back and just rue the different opportunities lost. And I understand the commentary throughout the week around, well, what scenario-based training are they doing? It is impossible to replicate 89,000 people at the MCG when you're 3.5 quarters deep, when the lungs are burning, when the crowd is caving in, and you've got to work through that. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where you have to experience it. And once you've experienced it more and more, the repetition, then you start to understand.
Yeah, I absolutely concur with all of that. The fact of the matter is the Blues were 8-2 at one point. After 10 games, quite clearly they were 8-2 and they missed the finals. So a lot of talk about success, failure. Not everything needs to be determined by a success or a failure. But one thing I'm keen on, and you alluded to some of it there, but specifically you as a leader, you've been a vice captain for a long time. You've been in a leadership group for nearly a decade, and you've captained AFL clubs along the way. How would you address the season as a whole, the past 2 weeks, and then how would you address the ability or the need or the thought process or the path to be able to move on so guys aren't carrying it all summer?
Yeah, and I think the key there, and it's very, very difficult because there's so much emotion that is tied up in the disappointment of the combination of a season that ends up in disappointment because you don't make the finals. I don't think you address it here and now because you're going to have a different team that takes you forward into next year. But there's important lessons to be learnt from this game. And fundamentally, the vast majority of their core will still be there. So there'll be really good learning points there to improve and get better from. What do you take from it? Well, you take the great that was an 8-2 start, so many powerful performance, and you build off the really good stuff, I think. And there's no doubt there's an area, as there is for every team every year, there's areas to improve on. But I'm a strong believer you work in and off the things that you've done well, and you really nail down and bite down on those things and look to improve your strengths and make them even greater. And then you obviously address your deficits. They're probably potentially a few players short potentially, but at the same time, what they need is experiencing those moments. And they've got another 22 games and some really tight ones at the end of it where those players will be even more mature. What I've experienced throughout my career is we've had really good experience on every line. So everyone's understanding of what they need to do in a certain scenario at a certain time. And if someone isn't quite sure, well, it's more than just one in terms of that experience. So you can bring everyone back to what our goal is in this moment, what we need to execute. And if someone drifts from that, you can realign them quite quickly.
Okay. Wise words from allegedly, apparently, a newly found wise man, a 300 footballer. So this is how it looks moving forward. Unfortunately, we move forward without the Blues and 9 others because their seasons are done. And this is how the first week of September looks. A week off, of course. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of that, but this is how it looks for week 1 of the finals at 1v4. So Saturday, 4:35 p.m. at the MCG, your Cats, Pat, against the rampaging Magpies. That'll attract another 80,000. You would imagine. Melbourne and Sydney square off Friday night at the MCG. Melbourne and Sydney. That's another top 4 clash and a big one at that. Fremantle will host the Western Bulldogs late on Saturday night at Optus Stadium over there in Perth. That's 5v8, a knockout final. And the other elimination final, Patrick, is Brisbane and Richmond at the Gabba. And that kicks us off Thursday night. So we've got to wait an extra week, or an extra week longer than I wish we would have had to have waited. But finals footy is here, and that is 4 very, very good games of football, Pat.
It is, and it's something that will go in greater depth in next week's edition of the Field. Finals, it's why you play. It's what it's about. But we'll follow that up at the start of next week. We're keen to dive into what has been a really fascinating weekend of sport when it comes to coaches, Josh. Now, we've seen, I think it was Monday where GWS announced their new senior coach, and we've seen Essendon, after an extraordinarily turbulent week, sack Ben Rutten. Your read on that, knowing people and players there, it was as ugly as it gets.
It doesn't get any uglier, Pat. You said it, and I was thinking it. So it doesn't get any uglier. It was terribly handled from the media side of things with how people from the club spoke openly and outwardly. The only person who spoke with dignity was probably Ben Rutten, to be honest, who stuck up for himself at a press conference, which I absolutely love. Typically we'd probably expect to see people try and take the so-called high road and not defend themselves, but he was able to to articulate the fact that he deserved better, and he did deserve better. And unfortunately, on Sunday, he was removed as senior coach. The person I've listened to a lot of talk about it, across talkback radio and on TV, and basically just with people who like to talk about footy. And the person whose words have stuck with you the most, and I think has spoken about this the best, is their former captain, in my mind, a Brownlow medalist, Jobe Watson. And he was on the coverage, Pat, on Saturday night before the game for Channel 7, speaking about everything that had gone on. This is before Ben Rutten had even been sacked, and this is what he had to say in the pre-game on 7.
Well, it's been diabolical, really, for the football club. I think that at least they're consistent, because they consistently don't know what they're doing and they consistently get it wrong. For me, it's a reflection on the culture of the club, and they are operating in silos. There is no cohesion between football departments, upstairs, board. They are all looking outward instead of looking inward. They are a dysfunctional place.
Well said before, Das. Ben Rutten.
That is as strong as it gets. And Jobe Watson, as you know, Pat, is a very, very, very intelligent person. He doesn't fly off the handle. He doesn't speak for the sake of it. They are strong words. I agree with every one of them. But still, nevertheless, it just probably highlights how deep a hole and how grave a situation Essendon find themselves in. And unfortunately, it's one that they find themselves in because of poor management from within.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to listen to a few of the club heavies and talk about the clubs that they want to emulate, one of which is Geelong. And my experience with Geelong, and a huge part of the success that Geelong has had, this is my personal view, is that under Brian, and Steve Hocking's only been CEO for this season, but he's been the same. But under Brian
Cook,
footy handled footy. There wasn't management standing and sitting outside of their lane trying to micromanage. Footy was left alone to run and report to Simon Lloyd, the head of footy. There wasn't people coming in over the top from board level or CEO coming in over the top. It was trusted that those in football are in those roles for a reason. That's why we're paying them. So they're there to execute their role. And that was one of the, that's where a strong board, a strong cohesive board is so critical to the success of a footy club. And understanding your role on that board, it isn't to have your face spread all over the front page of the Herald Sun. Your role is to make really good appointments and then back in your team and give them time to make the decisions necessary for sustained success. And it doesn't happen overnight. Those in football understand that it does take time. And overnight success doesn't happen overnight. It takes years. And it takes the building of a list. It takes the employment of really good staff. So I hope for the players' sake that they're able to do this. I would have loved to have seen, and I think it would have been, and perhaps this is a bias from me, but I would have loved to have seen them stick with Ben Rutten. Ben's a wonderful person, great football mind. Our club's going to get an absolute ripper in Ben. But it's been handled poorly.
Oh, it's been terrible. And Jobe's words about everyone looking for someone else to blame effectively, I'm paraphrasing, but that's effectively what he said. It's always someone else's fault. It's not our fault. Shaking hands and agreeing on certain things, but then going and doing something else in the background. And it is a shame. I was lucky enough to be in the Essendon rooms after the game Saturday night for big Michael Hurley's last game and celebrate with he and his family. But it was an eerie place to be. It was an awkward place to be because Benny Rutten was standing in the corner with his family. He was emotional, and there were board members, and there were past players, and there were family members, and there were current players who were disappointed that the season was over, and it was really eerie. And I had a chance to chat to Truck, who you and I both played with, so we are absolutely biased. But I didn't really know what to say to him, to be honest. I think in the end, I made a bit of a joke about him probably preferring to be at fullback wrestling Fraser Garrick and Brendan Favola because the situation was just
one out.
Just a mess. And he said, I wouldn't mind wrestling the G train at the moment, even as little chance as I'll probably stand against him because it was just ugly. It was just a messy situation. It was eerie. Everyone was standoffish and not really sure what to say to each other. So,
but that speaks to the instability. Like,
absolutely,
it's only been a few years since, everyone was talking around Xavier Campbell being potentially an heir apparent to Gil McLachlan. And if you read what's been written over the past little while, it's been that Xavier's been a real staunch advocate of Ben Rutten. So it undermines Xavier.
Yeah.
And he's clearly a really highly rated administrator.
Yeah.
And I'm strong on you only move people on if you think you can get someone better. So I hope for the players' sake that they can find an ability to let football run football and find stability where sustained success can happen.
Yeah, and I think togetherness is almost their most important tool or ability that they need to find. They need to actually do things together versus doing things, as Joe Watson said, in solos. Now, one more serious topic, unfortunately, Pat, before we move on to the commencement of AFLW Season 7 and a few other bits and pieces across the sporting world. The Dayne Zorko incident that blew up last week was significant. It was sad. Unfortunately, what's happened, or what's been said, has found its way into the public domain, which was probably always going to be the case. I said on my spot on SEN radio that I feel like given the amount of education and information that players, you as a player, but me as a former player, get from year to year, I think he should be suspended for a week for that, which is strong. I don't say it off the cuff. I actually sort of don't feel that comfortable saying it, but I feel like it is something that has been drilled into players enough to understand what is right and what is wrong, what you can't say on a footy field. A lot of people are suggesting that the AFLPA should step in on behalf of Harrison Petty, but you represent both parties in this situation. Dayne Zorko is also a player. So is there a role for the PA here? I do feel like, you guys as a union get thrown into situations that perhaps you don't necessarily fit into, but where do you sit on this from a players association point of view, first of all?
Well, I haven't been involved in any discussions around this, but I do know that the PA has been involved. It's spoken to both parties. Dayne issued an apology. It was accepted by Harrison, and both football clubs have been in dialogue. So whilst there can be the external noise around this, and we can hear all sorts of outlandish suggestions and thought-provoking commentary. For me, it's as soon as if the clubs are happy, if the players, and in particular in this situation, Petty is happy, then we move on. You certainly don't condone it, but you have to own it as a player. Dayne's done that. And I don't think it warrants any extra investigation given how open I think both parties have been around it. It's a continual education piece for our players to be really cognizant of what we say to each other on the field, and that there is a line that we shouldn't cross. But what I will say is with the commentary around Dayne, I don't think any penalty that you could think up, whether it's a 1 week suspension, I think what the commentary that he's experienced this week, and rightfully so because of what he said, that's penalty enough in my book.
Okay, we'll certainly agree to disagree on that one. The AFLW, as I mentioned a moment ago, kickstarts Season 7, and of course, the first game of the season will be live on Channel 7, Carlton and Collingwood. Hopefully we get a game as good as what we got in round 23 in the men's competition. That game, of course, is at Princes Park. We've got 4 new teams this year, Pat. The Swannies, Port Adelaide, with, of course, Aaron Phillips taking the role as captain from the crosstown rival Crows. Essendon and Hawthorn, who have got Beck Goddard, the former Crows premiership coach, at the helm. So the 18-team competition is complete and season 7 is here.
It is. It's as you said, it's 18 teams. It's only 10 games. So the importance of starting well, and when we say it with any season, it's critical. But when there's only 10 games to be played, it doubles down on just how important those games are. Carlton Collingwood promises to be a fascinating one. We've seen Carlton lose arguably their best player in Prasparkas. She's going to be is a huge signing for Essendon, so she'll be a critical player for them this season, as is Aaron Phillips, arguably the game's best player.
I'm not sure that's arguable, Pat.
Well, if we talk historically, she's the game's best player. But I think more broadly, what Aaron brings to any side is professionalism that probably no other team experiences, because she's played professional sport and dominated it. So I think that's the thing that's potentially not necessarily understood, that when these girls have all been brought together, and it's still very much in its infancy, and as a player, you're still very much, you're learning from those that came before you. And those that first started AFLW, I'm not sure, and it's simply the makeup of the competition, but it wasn't the same level as what professional sport is, because it's full time.
Yep.
But what Phillips brought to Adelaide was an attention to detail that I don't think any other teams had, and they've had success on the back of that. So it's a phenomenal signing for Port, because you get that straight away. What's the loss going to be like for Adelaide? I thought Adelaide would have lost more players than they have. It's not to say that they haven't lost important players. They have, but I don't think they'll be stripped back as bare as potentially what I thought they might be. Melbourne, I think, will be the team to beat. They seem to have gotten stronger, which is extraordinary given the fact that there's been 4 new teams come into the competition. The quality dilution of players was and is a really big talking point around this, but it's almost been like the Melbourne players have gotten together, and whether this is Daisy Pearce bringing the troops in and saying, we've got one more crack at this to take a little bit less, to stay on board, to trust the process, and we'll get there. I suspect they'll be extremely difficult to beat. Fremantle, arguably robbed of a premiership in 2020 due to COVID. It promises to be a fascinating season. Can't wait for it. And it all kicks off Thursday night.
Indeed. Look at you go. And also, before we move on to other sports, any AFLW superstars, preferably superstars, out there that are listening, we're on the hunt for some AFLW content. So I'll be hosting a weekly AFLW podcast. You'll turn up for a second podcast, will you?
I will. But we are looking, if you're interested, come and join me.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you handle all the intricacies for the Field AU, but I'm taking on board AFLW. So look out.
Plus all the other podcasts. So, all right, if you want to work with the 300-game superstar Patrick Dangerfield and book some AFLW, get at us and we will make it happen. Now, Pat, elsewhere in the world of sport now, actually, we're not talking sport here. What we are talking here, firstly, is one of our great loves,
yes,
brand, the company, the organisation, the business, Cadbury's. We are on the lookout for sponsors. So
we are
welcome to drop us a line if they want. But I was reading today when I had a few minutes spare that there's a new Cadbury's number on the shelves. And I thought, well, I need to have a look at this and I need to experience it for myself. It is the new, so Caramilk has been one of the great inventions by the kind folk at Cadbury's in the past.
Up there with penicillin, Sliced bread, wheels, you know.
That's important. And then the other one, which is a little older than caramel, but was the jelly popping candy, the Marvelous Creations line of chocolate. Now, Pat, you won't believe it, but ooh, look at that. Now, we'll ensure, I know this is an audio podcast, but I'm holding up a block of Cadbury's Caramilk Marvelous Creations jelly popping candy beanies in caramelized white chocolate. There were
been out of the game for 10 months now.
There were 2 blocks. There's only one left.
You've been out of the game for 8 months. What are you weighing in at?
I don't know. I don't have to get on the scales anymore, but just get a look at that, Pat. So firstly, that is as was suggested to me online, that is probably the greatest chocolate that they actually produce. It's brand new. I had a little try of some only half an hour ago. It is to die for. The caramel. I don't even like caramel, and I love the caramel range of chocolate. So work that out. But Pat, that stuff is the bomb, and you are a monstrous consumer of Cadbury. So I know you'll be, unfortunately, no supermarkets in Monks Creek, but you'll be getting some of that in your guts pronto.
Did you mention bombs being dropped? Well, I can't remember whether you said that or not. Anyway, Joe Rogan during the week said during a UFC event that he'd done a deal, Gronk, for Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski to join the Las Vegas Raiders before they eventually joined Tampa, only for then head coach John Gruden to say that he didn't want Brady. Now, you know, what was Brady quoted as saying that season around someone that didn't want him?
He went on. I should have had a look at the name of the podcast. I'm going to say it was the Chop Shop or something like that. One of those, up there podcasts where they just sit around and chew the fat. And he went on that show. He referenced an unnamed team, and he said, you're going to tell me you want that mother bleep over me. And everyone thought, my God, who's he talking about? Someone didn't want Tom Brady. You've got to be kidding me. Now, evidently, on the back of what Joe Rogan's had to say at this UFC event, it seems like, and if you take Joe Rogan at his word, and for all the things that people may say about Joe Rogan, he's a very well-connected individual. It looks like
the Gronk is on the couch at the time. Gronkowski is there.
And doesn't dispute what he says either. So it looks like Brady was referring to the Vegas Raiders and Derek Carr. So that's very interesting. And those with short memories, I'll remind you that Tampa went on to win the Super Bowl that season. So it doesn't look to be a great decision by head coach John Gruden. And it wasn't.
What happened to him? What happened to?
It wasn't the only poor decision John Gruden made, because he got sacked on the spot for a string of racist emails and other things that he went and did. Now, they were from a long time ago, but he still, you have to be answerable for your actions. So that was a bombshell dropped by Joe Rogan. We haven't heard it confirmed or denied by Tom Brady, but that was a monstrous story just thrown out there off the cuff.
We heard Monday night on the couch when I think it was Gary Lyon questioning Alistair Clarkson whether he had spoken to any contracted players from other clubs, and Alistair sort of denied it and then said, oh, maybe I had a little sneaky chat to a couple, and then laughs it off. So there's been somewhat of a honeymoon period with North Melbourne over the past week, having signed Alistair Clarkson. Interesting to wonder sort of how many different conversations that he's had with different players from around the league around, potentially joining him at North Melbourne. It will be interesting to see throughout this off-season. It's obviously one of, and always is, the highest rating parts of AFL footy now. It's trade week or trade period, however long it takes.
2.5 weeks it is, trade period. Those podcasts are ranked still within the top 100 podcast downloads in Australia alongside the field, 8 or 9 months after the trade period ends. So people, it's not timeless. It's not timeless information, but people are still listening to it as if it is 8 or 9 months down the track. It is remarkable how big the trade period is and how much people love being a list manager and a trader and a player agent and all those type of things.
Everyone can win in trade period. Not everyone can win the AFL Grand Final, but everyone during trade period can land that big fish and be a winner. Speaking of big fish, we've seen that in the BBL. David Warner, he ends almost a decade-long absence after signing with the Sydney Thunder for the upcoming BBL season. Now, it's safe to say the game needed this. It needed this signing. It needs big Australian players playing in this tournament. He's 35 years of age. He'll reportedly earn around $340K. Sydney's salary cap is $2 million, plus a marketing element to that deal. Now, that is cheap when you consider the offers that I dare say he would be getting from other leagues around the globe, and particularly the one that is currently lining up in the exact same time frame of the BBL, which is the biggest challenge for the upcoming Australian 2020 season.
Well, it's a huge coup because he's Australia's best ever T20 cricketer. I would think he's our most,
and that's what launched his career.
Absolutely, and he's much more than that. He's a great Test bat. He's a great ODI bat. That's for sure. But his T20 career is incredible as well. It speaks for itself. He spoke about how his family and his daughters had a major part to play in why he chose to stay here and play in the BBL versus going overseas and earning far, far, far more money. So it is a great coup for the BBL. The other issue with the BBL is whether they're going to be on TV or not. So we won't step into that hula hoop, Pat, because it's a little messy and it might be stepping on the toes of our own friends from Channel 7. So David Warner to the BBL, regardless of whether it's on TV, off TV, on a
Cricket Australia need to put more effort into it for mine, Josh, because they had the opportunity last year when Steve Smith was keen to play, and I don't care whether he was pre-listed or not. If you want the best thing for the Australian cricketing community, it's having the best players play. And there's no doubt they made an error there. So they need to do more in order to entice and bring the best players playing to Australian shores, to Australian games.
Yep.
That's the only way to grow it.
To Australian fans, I agree. I agree. You haven't put a foot out of a line there, hopefully. Anyway, on to the racing season, because the first Group 1 of the season, you can have a little sleep.
Yes.
The first Group 1.
I'm all over this, Josh.
You are not all over this. You don't have to pretend. The first Group 1 race of the season, the first of 74, was run and won up in Sydney, the Winx Stakes. You should know who Winx is, but we've got a resolution to the alligator blood situation now. Racing fans will know this story. Non-racing fans won't, but it is very interesting. So alligator blood, a bit of a cult horse, and people love him, but he's owned by a really polarizing character whose name will stay out of my mouth because he does like to throw legal action at a lot of people. He is filed for bankruptcy. But so the horse has been banned from racing in New South Wales because of his situation, and now banned in Victoria because of his situation. Clearly, running for millions and millions of dollars when you are bankrupt is a little bit of an issue, and you owe people money. So the horse has been transferred to Jerry Harvey, the owner of Harvey Norman, and he's now allowed.
Actually, Josh, that's incorrect. This will now be known as the People's Horse because, as you all know, we all pay tax, and those tax dollars go to different things. They build roads, they take your trash out, that's taken to the tip, and then the government spends it, and then someone like the wonderful Jerry Harvey collects JobKeeper, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of JobKeeper, and he's able to buy horses with it. So it's actually our horse. It's everyone's horse. Alligator blood is now the People's Horse.
I'm just grabbing my pen, and my list of prospective sponsors included Harvey Norman. I'll just strike them from the list because on the back of that, they won't be sponsoring the field. But
should just say, love Harvey Norman. Wonderful place.
quality and quality. If they send us some, it'll be high quality. If they don't, it is just mediocre.
Garbage.
Back on track. So Alligator Blood will be allowed to race in Melbourne. So he'll race in the Group 1 Memsie Stakes, which kicks off in Victoria at Caulfield this weekend. And, of course, the Field Horsepower off to an absolute flyer. Matt Hill, the voice of the Melbourne Cup, came down and sat with me, and we previewed the spring as a whole. We had a little bit of a bet for charity. Of course, we're betting for the Kids Plus Foundation here in Victoria. I found a winner. Matt Hill did not. So there's $150 in the kitty already after one weekend. And, of course, the Group 1 Memsie can be seen on the screens of Channel 7, Pat.
Bit of work, Josh. Now it is time for one of my favourite segments. It is Mirror on the Media. And it's safe to say the cupboards were a little bare this week. So without further ado and without any context whatsoever, I give you one of our favourites on the field. In fact, we need to get him on the field because it'd be better to actually have him sort of respond to this. But Tommy Brown talking around the changes and what potentially may or may not happen at Bomberland. Forget the context. Just listen to the commentary.
Aims to go at the minute. And this is not, I understand, today's press conference about CEO Xavier Campbell. He's okay, I think, for the moment. But this is a developing story. Ben Rutten, they've parted company with Essendon to hold a press conference shortly of all those details this afternoon on our coverage and tonight in our bulletin at 6 o'clock.
Tough to watch this last night, Brownie.
All right, Pat, you've
coach or not.
Just bear with me. I found the wrong bit of the audio, but it's all part of the the fun here on the
One
field.
job.
Let's have another go.
One job.
When Tom Brown starts talking, it's hard to keep track. So let's have another go.
I didn't want any context to this, Josh. It's funny if there's no context, and then Tom can come on and talk about how, well, this is the context.
Well, if I can't find it after 3 or 4 goes, we'll get this edited out. Otherwise, we'll leave it as is.
Wrapped up. In terms of what that press conference will go through, I think they'll announce this external review and details of that, which will involve now a coach search as part of that massive external review. It's a big review, the football department as well as the coach search. I don't think they'll announce an interim coach because they don't have any more games to go at the minute.
Pat?
That's very insightful of you, Tom. I don't think they will be announcing an interim coach, given it is the end of the season. Tom, you are our man in the mirror this week on Mirror on the Media.
Oh, poor old Tommy. You've got a couple you like to go after, and unfortunately, Tom Brown is one of them.
Love him, Tommy. We need to get you on the field because I'm sure you've got a few sort of stories throughout your time in the media. So we'll have to get him on because I think people would enjoy listening to Tom.
Well, he doesn't take replies on Twitter, so he's got the little reply thing permanently locked. So I'm not sure how we're going to get a hold of him. Anyway, we'll move right along because 3 votes. I'm really happy with 3 votes this week because I am giving it to the country, the People's Republic of China, the Chinese, because they have, out of the goodness of their heart, forgiven the debt, wiped the debt of 17 African countries. And not only that, Pat, that is remarkable in itself. They are also pledging aid, food and medical supplies to those struggling nations. That is remarkable. Here, clap, clap, clap to China, the People's Republic of.
Are they trying to buy goodwill from the rest of the country, rest of the globe?
Hey, don't be pessimistic. It's a goodwill gesture. I'm taking it at face value. If they just drop another warship 50 k's off the top of Australia, I might start to see through the goodwill gesture. But for now, right here, right now, Pat, they get 3 votes on the field.
My 3 votes this week. Well, it's not really 3 votes because wasn't the best game I've ever seen the great M. Hurley play. But after 194 games, the big fella hanging out the boots, incredible to see. And I'm not sure whether the Richmond defenders have just decided to say, you know what? We might just let Hurls just sit in the pocket there and maybe just get a little cheapy mark. And then if you notice, whenever a player marks a ball in the pocket, every team comes right up to the line and will not let them play on. I reckon Dylan Grimes had, even though he wasn't playing, I reckon he had them lined up on the other side of the 50. They weren't letting anyone go near Hurls.
Yeah.
He could have ran around to the top of the square.
Yeah, well, I told him all after all these years, it's harder in the front half than the back half. And I think he finally agrees with me. So, indeed, well done to the big fella. 194 games. He probably would have played 294 if it wasn't for his hip falling off, his foot falling off when he started his career, and a year out of the game thanks to the supplement saga. So well done, Michael. I'm out for a lunch with him out at the races this Friday, so I'm looking forward to a couple of beers with the big guy. All right, Land, let's get to Joe the Goose of the week, and it's a good one. It's a wide-ranging Joe the Goose of the week this year.
We've been wide-ranging from 3 votes to Goose of the week. We've gone to Chainer, and now we're
going to we're going everywhere, but we are honing in on Finland because there were. So let me set this up. The Finnish PM, Sanna Marin. Now, if I've pronounced her name wrong, I do apologise. Sanna Marin. She was on video, on doing the rounds on social media, dancing, having a great time, having drinks. Or I don't think she was film drinking, but you'd imagine she was having a drink. Now, she had the weekend off. She had no political duties. She's since taken a drug test to prove that she was not under the influence of any drugs. People are calling for her to stand down. Now, anyone who has been critical of Sana, they are all Joe the Goose of the week, because you know what she was doing, Pat? Do you know what she was guilty of? Do you know what the PM of Finland was guilty of?
Being a human.
Being a human.
Have you seen on social media that people have taken to, because she is on social media, have taken to filming themselves dancing and then tagging her, and they're quite funny. But honestly, when you've got someone like Donald Trump, that was the rule of the supposed free world, on doing the sort of stuff that he was doing in his extracurricular activity. Oh gosh.
Hey, have you seen the Comey rule?
Yes.
He apparently used to enjoy the odd golden shower.
Anyway,
allegedly,
I've found it just absolutely absurd. Surely everyone's entitled to. And the last time I checked, it's what are the rest of the world leaders doing at the moment?
The thing I'm critical. I actually think politicians should be paid more. I think they've got the hardest, the non-winningest role in the world. Doesn't matter what they do, they can't necessarily win. They need more of them. Need to be like her. That's what Jacinta Ardern is. That's why she's so well regarded. It's because she's personable and she's relatable. Now the Finnish PM, she was just being like everyone else, or most other people her age, enjoying a good time with friends, having a drink and enjoying themselves. So, I mean, seriously, you're all gooses.
All right, that is us. Remember, you can catch us now absolutely everywhere. Not only are we on 7news.com.au, but you can catch our YouTube channel, The Field with JJ and Danger. Make sure you like and subscribe to that.
Whole show, Pat. You can watch the whole show as if it's a TV show. If we are not at the Logies within 2 to 3 years, I'll give up.
The unedited version of Josh playing with his phone so we can get Tommy Brown's audio. Plus our Instagram and Twitter socials. Make sure you follow that. And as we said, also, Horsepower drops this week as we look ahead, Josh.
Yes. What do we look ahead to, Pat? Do you need to read it or should I just say it off the cuff?
Group 1 in Victoria.
Yes, the Memsey Stakes this weekend, so look out for that. I'm on the hunt. I've got a couple of co-hosts lined up. Matt Hill was probably a benchmark a little too high to set for the first episode, but I've put the pressure on myself. I've got a really prominent owner of the industry. I've got a Melbourne Cup winning jockey. I've got them both just almost on the hook, Pat. So stay tuned for that. That will drop on Thursday. And one other thing, Pat, the NFL season it starts on September 11, I'm going to say, maybe September 10 Australian time. The NFL podcast will drop next week. Now, don't panic. Your services will not be required for the NFL show. But what we're going to be doing, Pat, you know a little bit about this. We're going to be running a tipping competition called Touchdown Tipping. Now, it's not a normal footy tipping competition where you've got to go on there. There's 32 teams. You don't have to do 16 picks. All you have to do is this. It's a hole-in-one style competition where you go on to thefieldau.com, you click on the tab Touchdown Tipping, and all you need to do is put in your name, your email, and then you pick the game that you want to guess, and you've got to get the scoreline exactly right. And if you do so, now I know it sounds hard, but if you can do it, you will be handsomely rewarded. And I mean handsomely rewarded. We are just acquiring a prize pack of vouchers and goodies and things of that nature up around the $500 mark, Pat. So it will be, if you can get it, a very, very good prize pack. So you just got to go onto thefieldau.com, click on the Touchdown Tipping tab, and put your name, your email, guess the game. So, for example, Patriots 30, Falcons 20. And if that score comes up perfectly, you will win the prize. So we're going to make it easier to get involved in, harder to win. But if you do win it, Pat, bingo.
More details on the NFL podcast are dropping next week. Until then, like, share, and rate, and get around us. This has been The Field with JJ and Danger.